Hi, how you doing? So here's the last video for the week, and here I just wanted to talk to you about your recovery after the session. Once everything's over, what you're going to do immediately after your session and following your session to ensure that you're ready for your next session, whether that's tomorrow or in 48 hours, whenever it is. How can you most optimize your recovery to make sure you're ready for that next session? And the key thing that you do once you've finished your session is ensure that you eat before you stop sweating. Now ideally, with the tribal approach, we follow a kind of paleo template, so we'd ideally have you eating real food as soon as you finish your training. I understand that's not always possible, so down the bottom here I've got a strategy for you if it's impossible for you to eat immediately after your session. But first, let's just take a look about exactly what you should be eating post-session and how to manage that. Now, what you eat is generally kind of to do with what the session's been like. So the session will always have a certain effect upon your glycogen stores that you have within your body. Now, some sessions are going to really deplete that glycogen store, some sessions aren't going to run it down at all. So what you need to do is learn about your body, and you need to understand when you're working within your diesel zone, your cruiser zone, or your sports zones, what effect that has on the depletion of glycogen within your body. Indeed, what happens when you're doing a strength session, what happens to the glycogen within your body then. And then you can start to measure your nutritional input in that first meal after you finish training. Now, your options here are to change the split in that meal between the plant-based foods or carbohydrates and the animal-based foods, which are your proteins and your fats. Now, that ratio can change. As much as we follow a paleo template, we're certainly not looking for you to go low carb, okay? You're an endurance athlete, you need to make sure you're fueling that exercise, and we're not after a ketogenic style diet here. What I'm looking for you to do is make sure you fuel yourself properly and make sure you keep your glycogen reserves topped up all the time. So if you run it down, you're going to replace it. Now, these could be described as dinner plates and how they're split up. So over on the left here, we've got 30% of your dinner plate coming from carbohydrates, and we've got 70% coming from proteins and fats. Now, this is the choice of meal that I'd use if I hadn't really run down my glycogen reserves during the session. Maybe I've just completed an hour at diesel intensity and done a few drills and bits and pieces like that. There's no need for me here to replenish my glycogen reserves because I haven't run them down. The middle option here is a 50-50 split between carbohydrates and proteins and fats. This is if maybe you've done a sports intensity workout with some very short intervals mixed in with some diesel work. You feel the need to replenish your glycogen reserves a little, but not completely. And lastly, over here we've got a 70% split and a 30% split between carbohydrates and proteins and fats. This is for if you've been working mainly in this cruiser intensity, your glycogen burn's going to be massive during that session. You need to make sure you replenish it. Now, obviously, this is real food if you can. But if you can't face eating after your session, you do need to replenish something. Say, for example, you've got to rush straight back into work, you need something, and that's when like a convenience, like a recovery drink can really work well for you. What I'd encourage you never to do is just to have nothing. You need to have something, and if you really haven't got the capacity to get some real food in, then a recovery drink works. Now, recovery drinks come with different ratios of protein to carbohydrate. They're both really fast delivery proteins and carbohydrates when you get them in a recovery drink form. And the ratio could be from anywhere like a 1-to-1 ratio, again, which is going to measure up quite nicely with this plate. So if you haven't taxed your glycogen reserve at all, then that 1-to-1 ratio will work for you. A 1-to-2 ratio, which will mean more like this sort of kind of level. And then lastly, a 1-to-3, which is most often seen in the endurance world, a 1-to-3 ratio of protein to carbohydrate. That measures up nicely with this plate. So if you've done a big cruiser session, that 1-to-3 ratio will really work for you. Okay, hope that helps, and make sure you're getting some food in immediately post-session. Good luck.